So, Moana 2 is the sequel to Disney's Moana from 2016, which a lot of people loved for its great sense of adventure, its representation, and the music that you just couldn't get out of your head. So, there's a lot of pressure built up for this sequel to see, where can you go with Moana? And I mean, I don't think it's a big shocker here for anyone that the music in this one is not as catchy, but I think what's a little bit more of a shocker is that this is supposed to be like an exciting adventure film where we continue on with the familiar characters, and it doesn't have the same vibe of adventure that the first film had. It does have a lot of stuff going on. There's bigger stakes, there's more characters, there's plenty of music, and the animation looks great, and yet it never quite feels like it's all there, because it feels like so much of the aspects that made Moana so exciting have been kind of compartmentalized here, where they're not so much built as they're just kind of pushed into the film. And I think it really does damage this type of film to work, because it does have some interesting ideas here and there. Obviously, it continues on with the titular character of Moana, voiced by Ali'i Cavallo, and she's and I think she's the perfect encapsulation of the problem that this film has. It's because she is so exuberant, and she approaches everything with this, I'm ready for this, I can handle anything nature, which is a great start for that character. But I think to make the adventure more endearing, you've got to have those moments where she's kind of grounded a bit, where she does lose that sense of hope for, how she can accomplish her goal, which is pretty much what happened in the first film. But the thing is, this film is so fast that it kind of like it has to zoom from bit to bit to bit, that, like I said, it doesn't really build, so we don't really have a lot of time to build up a lot of the emotions that she feels in this trip, because honestly, there's just a lot of people crowding this film, because on Moana's current adventure, she's, previously she restored the heart of, basically she restored the environment, and now in this new film, she's basically got to resurrect an island that's going to start directing traffic of other tribes so that, she can explore more. So more or less what happened in the first film, but with, heavier stakes, because now she's combating other gods that are much more dangerous this time around. But the problem with this film is that because it doesn't spend a lot of time developing much, it approaches Moana more or less how we expect her to be, and that doesn't give a lot of time to grow for her crew here, because she assembles a crew of interesting individuals. So there's Loto, who is kind of the brainy builder. She's a very eccentric architect. You have Keely, who is a curmudgeonly old farmer who, makes sense to bring out on, for agricultural reasons. And then there's Moni, who is the ultimate Maui fanboy, so he can't wait for Maui to show up in the film, once again played by Dwayne Johnson. Much of the same character here, not much to build on him, but I'll get more to Maui in a minute. But I want to focus on the crew here, because I think there's a lot of potential for the crew, especially for Moana trying to learn lessons of leadership. But she learns them very fast in the film with a fairly decent musical number that kind of gets her crew motivated to work together and build up their skill, which it's a good song, but then it kind of robs the film of them still struggling to work together. There are a few moments here and there, but it kind of resolves itself too quickly. The way that I've kind of tried to describe it is that if it's like a video game where you just choose, you're an RPG and you choose the characters that make the most sense. So, everything that Moana does here is calculative. She has the right people for the job, and they all play their own part in this adventure. But even though, they serve their usefulness, we don't really see much of a build for them to get to that point. It just feels like there's only one song you need, and that'll immediately get you going to the next scene. And without any room for character growth, because in the original film, there was enough time that we spent with Moana and Maui where, we sensed their chemistry and their camaraderie and the hopelessness they would have when, the final act arrives and they gotta, start making daring moves. None of that is really present here in the sense that there's growth, because there's a lot of familiar beats, and it does have a lot of the expected moments. Like, Maui has another eccentric song that he sings. Moana once again approaches, the idea of legacy and, being true to her ancestors and, being more about exploration. Like I said, all stuff we got in the first film, and it's here in the second film, but it's just kind of there. It doesn't really reveal another side to these characters that I was hoping to see, and it just makes the crew more of a letdown, because it feels like, there would be something more to explore with, essentially adding more characters to the boat. And unfortunately, there's never enough time for anything in this film. Just when it feels like we're getting to know characters and something interesting is going to happen, it immediately darts to the next song or the next action sequence or the next god that they've got to confront. Even though the film presents another, there's got to be like that one moment where you have like Tamatoa, basically a giant monster that gets in their way, and the monster you get here is Matangi, who is I was kind of surprised how they framed this character. So according to Hindi legend, Matangi is a bit of an outcast, and it feels like that would be something interesting worth exploring. Unfortunately, the film kind of just settles for making her a bit of a bat creature who isn't so much trying to stop Moana and Maui so much as she wants to instigate them to kind of like do her dirty work for her, because she's in apparently this subplot going on with like a battle between the gods, and Matangi just kind of views Maui and Moana as kind of these useful characters for a subplot that is never really explored and is kind of just left on the table for a sequel, which is surprising that the film didn't have time to, with how much time it speeds through all its characters. It never once had time to develop a bigger threat of a villain who is more present, as opposed to just their magic affecting the rest of this world. Now, I think depending on how much you love the animation, and depending how forgiving you are of the songs not being as great as the first Moana, but still being catchy enough where I enjoyed them anytime they were on the screen, I think most audiences will probably dig this if you're willing to temper your expectations. But I don't think that, if you're coming in here expecting to see something more explored with Moana and Maui and their culture and visiting other tribes, you don't really get that here. Like, you can feel the attempt being made here, like it's trying to build something up, but there's never a moment where you felt as completely engaged as I felt as completely engaged as the first Moana, where I was excited to see where this was going to go next and what themes it would explore. And unfortunately, Moana 2 doesn't really do that. Even the moments of humor kind of fell flat for me, because most of the gags in this film they either involve slime and bodily they involve slime, bodily functions, and animal noises, and a little of that went a long way. There are some funny bits here and there, but it never feels like there's a consistency to the humor. And I think that's also due in part to how it doesn't really feel like there's a growth going on within the plot where you're interested to see where the story is going, because Moana just kind of jumps into her big adventure without asking too many questions or having much downtime for consideration. Maui's character, who's also involved in like this little god subplot, is we kind of just catch up with him when he's like about like halfway through or in the middle of his own story, and it feels like all the characters here are just too busy doing everything that you expect a Moana sequel to do, that there's never a moment where you just get to enjoy them, just see their charm, just to hang out with them and just build on their character and this sense of adventure. So unfortunately, Moana 2, like, it still looks good, it still sounds good, but it just doesn't have the same vibe as before, mostly just because it feels like it's speeding through all of its adventure, that there's never a moment to appreciate any of it.